keep changing this dang list, but there's one commonality every single time I redo it. I can't seem to even agree with myself. A big howdy to all of my fellow and future hobbyists out there. My name is Matthew and I am your BRS beginner guru. In case you missed our last episode, episode 42, watch it right now because then you'll understand how we ended up choosing the 10 corals on this list. And I promise you guys, I'm gonna try my best to pronounce all these correct. I got my computer right here, I got pronunciation guides, but I'm probably gonna mess up with some of the Latin names, so mea culpa. If I say something wrong and you know I said it wrong, please put a comment below. And with that, let's jump to the first great beginner coral on our list. Starting out, number 1 is Pachyclavularia violacea. I seriously had to practice that like 15 times before doing this. That is, of course, known more commonly as green star polyps or GSP. This is a soft coral, and regarding color variations, I've never really seen any. They all look pretty similar with a purple base and green polyps. Growth rate, super fast growing compared to a lot of other corals. It likes to grow on rock work and on the glass, and I've even seen it coat a sandbed at times. Moving on to our care tips, let's start with flow. I would say GSP likes slightly higher flow rates, primarily to keep detritus off of the purple mat, but nothing crazy high. Lighting, they're not super picky, but just nothing too strong. Feeding-wise, they're photosynthetic just like every single coral on this list, but they could probably benefit from some additional feeding of some really fine coral foods. Aggression, these are not aggressive, but they do aggressively grow, so if you put them on one piece of your rock work, it may end up encrusting and growing everywhere, even in places where you don't want them. For placement, I really like to put them on an island and then they'll kind of encrust it and you'll have this really cool green star polyp island. But I know a lot of hobbyists who like to put them on the back of their tank because then it creates this really cool kind of grass-like growing surface, or even hobbyists who have an area on their substrate where they move the sand to the side and they put it directly on the glass and then it kind of looks like grass growing from the bottom of the tank. How about water chemistry? I've actually struggled keeping GSP, which I know is crazy, and I think it's because a lot of the times my tanks are a little bit too clean. So I would say GSP likes slightly dirtier water. Definitely make sure you have some nitrates and some phosphates in there. Price point, a little note here, every time I talk about price, we're talking about in today's values, and it ranges dramatically depending on what part of the country you live or depending on what country you actually live in. But as of now, you can get a small frag for $20 to $30. Overarching thoughts for GSP, I think it's a really cool coral. I think the green colors mixed with the purple base can be really phenomenal. A really fast growth rate so you can frag it and share it with friends, and especially on an island once it encrusts the whole thing. I think it adds a really nice pop of color and flow to your tank. Beginner coral number 2 is actually a group of beginner corals, and I'm going to read off their scientific names here. We're talking about Lobophytum, Sinularia, Nephthia, and Sarcophytum, more commonly known as toadstools and leather corals. There are actually a lot of common names for this group, including toadstool, toadstool leather, finger leathers, Lobophytum leathers, Sinularia coral, and neon green Nephthia. Type of coral, these are soft corals. Color variations, there's actually a couple color variations, but they pretty much run the gamut of different browns and greens. Growth rate, it really depends. When I have had different leather corals, they tend to go in cycles. Sometimes they sit and they don't seem to grow at all, and other times they'll just have a growth spurt and go crazy. For care tips, let's start with flow. Really, these can be anywhere from low flow to high flow. The thing about leather corals is a lot of them will shed the outer layer of their skin. Skin? Is it skin? I don't think it's skin. But a lot of them will shed their outer layer every few weeks. The first time you have it, you will think that it's dying, but it's not. It's just a natural process. And if it's in a very low flow environment, it might not be able to shed that skin and get it away from its body. So if you do notice one of these corals shedding their skin, you want to make sure it's in a medium to high flow. That way the water current can take away the shed and it can go into the filtration. For lighting, anywhere from low to medium, so we're talking from 50 to 150 par, but if you do want to put it in a higher par area of your tank, you can usually acclimate it over time. They're really hardy corals as long as you take your time and acclimate them well. Feeding, they don't require supplemental feeding, but they will pull nutrients out of the water column, but of course they're photosynthetic. Aggression, while not likely to sting other corals, some of these leather-type corals do secrete a toxin from their body, which can damage sensitive corals, especially those that are placed nearby. Placement, definitely in the lower area of your tank, even the sand bed. What I usually like to do is I'll attach them to some small piece of rock and then place that rock into the substrate, or you can attach it to some small part of your aquascape. Water chemistry, nothing too clean. Really, these corals are great in dirty water environments, but they are super hardy and they can acclimate to most tank environments as long as you do it slowly. Price-wise, well, since we're talking about several different species of corals, there is really a quite large range, and it really depends on what type it is, the colorations of it, and the size. But I've seen some frags anywhere from $20 to $75, $75 definitely being more of the neon green leather corals. When I started out in this hobby, I was like, oh, they're so boring, but I have actually really grown to love leather corals. And especially some of the neon green ones, they are really, really pretty. But honestly, just some standard leather corals. I have 2 leather corals in my seahorse tank, and they grow really well. I like their shapes and I like their texture. And if you do want something like a seahorse tank, they make a perfect hitching post for those seahorses. While maybe not the most exciting of corals out there, I think they make up for it with their fast growth rate and their really cool textures and shapes. And the third beginner coral on our list goes by the scientific genus of Xenia. Some of the more common names you will see from this genus are pom-pom, red sea pulsing Xenia, and blue Xenia. Xenias are soft corals. When it comes to color variations, we're talking about different species that are more on the pink side and ones that are more on the blue side. Most Xenias do actively pulse, but not all of them will. How about the growth rate? Well, these are weed-like and probably some of the fastest growers out there. Moving on to care tips, let's start with flow. These definitely prefer a medium to high flow environment, especially if you have the kind with the pulsing tips. A higher flow will bring out the pulsing action in them. Lighting, we're talking low to medium par, anywhere from probably 50 to 150, but they are highly adaptable as long as you do it slowly. They can probably survive in super low light environments and much higher light environments. Feeding, I would say these corals get almost 100% of their food from the light, but Xenias can also absorb nutrients from their polyps and through their stock as well. Placement, I would definitely recommend placing these on some sort of rock island. If you put these on your main aquascape, trust me, they will take over the entire scape and you will regret it. So I would put them on some sort of island. It can be a small island or a larger island, and make sure it's away from the main aquascape, and then they're really gorgeous to look at and you don't have to worry about them taking over the rest of the scape. Pulsing Xenias will also actively grow on the glass, and I've seen quite a few hobbyists who like to put them on the back wall, kind of like GSP, and then as they grow a little bit too much, all you need to do is take a razor blade and you can cut off a piece of it and give it to a friend. Water chemistry, they are highly adaptable. Most hobbyists find success with pulsing Xenias, but some hobbyists, I'd say 20 to 30%, seem to always struggle, and we just don't really know why. Price-wise, I would say if you're going to a local fish store, you're looking for a small piece anywhere from $15 to $40, but if you have a local aquarium club or some buddies who have it, they'll oftentimes just frag off a piece and give it to you because it grows so fast. Overarching thoughts with your Xenia corals, they aren't necessarily my favorite. The colors are definitely more muted and more dull, but they make up for a lot of that with their pulsing motion. I've been able to have success with them, but I know other hobbyists who have not been able to. I think it's a really great beginner coral, but I do highly recommend placing them on an island, especially when you're starting out a new tank, because it will quickly grow and take over everything. The fourth beginner coral on our list comes from the genus Anthelia. There are a few common names for this, including waving hand Anthelia, pink waving hand, and purple Anthelia. Just like quite a few of the other corals on this list, Anthelia are a soft coral. Variations-wise, I think it's first important to note how similar Anthelia do look to Xenia, but if you look at the fingers on them, Anthelia fingers are much, much longer. Anthelia are usually some shade of pink, but depending on the lighting, they can look brown or even purplish. Growth rate, these are crazy fast corals. I think these even probably grow faster than Xenia. These may be the fastest growing corals in the hobby. Moving on to our care tips, let's start with flow, medium to high flow. They are a somewhat boring looking coral, but they make up for it with their water movement. So putting them in a medium to high flow environment will highlight that movement. Lighting, definitely prefer low par levels, but if you acclimate them slowly, they can definitely get used to higher par levels. Feeding, there's no need to feed them. They're photosynthetic and that will be enough. And honestly, they grow fast enough without your help. Aggression, they're not aggressive at all towards other corals. And another cool thing is other corals that are aggressive don't seem to bother Anthelia at all. But they do aggressively grow, so just keep that in mind when you're thinking about where to put them in the tank. Placement, I highly recommend, just like Xenia, place them on an island so that way they cover the island. You could also put them on a back wall, but know that it's going to take over the entire glass and probably end up spreading. So I'd really just recommend, especially starting out, if you haven't seen how quickly these grow, put it on an island and move it a little bit away from the main aquascape. Water chemistry, it honestly doesn't really matter. They seem to be able to thrive in any environment. Price, this is probably some of the cheapest coral because it's so prevalent and a lot of hobbyists have it like a weed in their tank. But if you're going to a local fish store, you can pick up a small piece from anywhere between $10 and $25. But honestly, if you have a friend or a local aquarium club, just ask around. I'm sure somebody has it and will be willing to give you a piece of it, if not all of it. Overarching thoughts on Anthelia, it's honestly probably the most boring coral on this list. I mean, the color is nothing exciting, but it does have some really cool water movement. And especially when we're talking about just starting out as a new hobbyist, you want to be able to find success, and you will learn a lot about corals and coral growth, and you probably will find success from this coral. So it's not necessarily exciting, but it's super inexpensive and it has really cool water movement. So why not give it a shot? Just put it on that island so it doesn't spread throughout the entire tank. That way, if you ever get sick of it, you can just pull out the island, give it to somebody else, and move on with other types of corals. And the fifth coral on our list are from the order Zoantheria. We're talking about Zoanthids. The two most common names you're going to hear are Polyps and Zoas. There is a huge debate between the taxonomic differences between Polyps and Zoas, but this is not the time to go into that. Type of coral, strangely, they actually belong with the stony coral group, although they don't secrete a calcium carbonate skeleton, so they're more like a soft coral. Just a quick note here, there is no scientific difference between soft corals, SPS, and LPS corals. These are just categories that hobbyists have made up to help group corals together. Color variations, there are way too many, and these are some of the most popular corals out there because they come in so many color variations with really cool names, and I wrote down a few of them, so let me read a few of them for you. Agent Orange, Bloodsucker, Blue Hornet, Captain America, Eagle Eye, Fire and Ice, Fruit Loops, Purple Monster, Sunny D, and there's way more, and there are hobbyists out there who know all of the names, and I just don't. So just know that they come in a plethora of colors. Growth rate, it varies wildly depending on the Zoanthid species. Here's a quick video of my Zoa garden. It started with just a few patches of Zoas less than a year ago, and it's pretty obvious to see which of the Zoas are growing really quickly and which of them aren't growing quickly at all. Moving on to care tips, and we need to start out with a very serious public service announcement. Zoanthids can contain one of the most dangerous toxins in the world that is extremely deadly, called a polytoxin. So anytime you handle Zoas or Polyps, you need to make sure you're wearing gloves, a mask, and eye protection just to protect yourself. Flow rate, well, really anywhere from low to high. I mean, I probably wouldn't put a wave maker directly pointed at the Zoas, but they seem to be able to thrive in a lot of different environments. I found that slightly higher flow rates are better because a lot of detritus can build up at their base. Lighting wise, really anywhere from low to high, but honestly, I usually place my Zoas in a low to medium environment. I found somewhere around 100 par to work really well, but some of these can survive at very low par levels, and some can adapt to very high par levels. Feeding, you don't need to feed them, they're photosynthetic, but they'll probably appreciate some sort of coral food occasionally. Aggression, they're not aggressive themselves, but they are definitely susceptible to the aggression of other corals, so just make sure you place them far enough away from other really aggressive corals. Placement wise, again, depending on the specific zoa species, some grow really fast, some go slowly, but one of the best ways to contain these is to make a little zoa garden. Just get a really cool looking rock and put a whole bunch of frags all the way around it. Let it grow in and then it will contain it. If you don't want to go with a zoa garden, just know that if you place them on your main rock work, depending on the species, they may grow and take over a much larger portion over time than you would hope for. Water chemistry, they're a very hardy species and can really be in clean tanks or in dirty tanks. They tend to thrive in all environments. That's why they're just such good beginner corals, because they can survive the mistakes that we make. Price-wise, this varies wildly depending on hobbyist demand. I have seen heads go anywhere from $10 for a single head to well over $100 for a single head, depending on the coloration. My overarching thoughts on zoas, they're a gray coral and they're so much fun because they can grow really quickly and they come in so many different colors. My only pet peeve when it comes to zoas is trying not, especially as a beginner, try not to get sucked in to this collector's hobby, because you may end up spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on very small amounts of zoas just because some hobbyists think the colorations are super cool. My recommendation starting out with zoas, there are plenty out there that are really beautiful and inexpensive, and start with those. And if you want to get into the high-end collector market down the road, just save that for another day. Beginner coral number 6. Well, that's for next episode. Check out the link. We'll put it right here. As always, everyone, thanks for watching. Happy reefing. Be well. We'll see you next time.